I felt there was a calling for me to do this trip. I feel a great sense of honor, especially to be following my ancestors' routes.
There's something magical when you get into a canoe with a team of people. There's something that just bonds people together around that paddling together, that being in sync with one another, this kind of magic that brings people together.
The journey begins not on water,
so I invite you to give thanks,
but at the Jesuits' Martyr Shrine in Midland, Ontario.
Black flies will teach you, the moose and the skunks will teach you, you will teach each other.
The idea of a canoe trip to promote reconciliation was this man's. Eric Sorensen, a Jesuit priest in training who has spent the last 2 years planning the expedition. The idea came to him when he learned of the Jesuits' residential schools near Spanish Ontario, where Indigenous children were sent after they were taken from their families. Forcibly separated from both culture and loved ones, often neglected or abused, many died. The consequences still echo through generations. Paul Jacques from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, signed up for the trip because, he says, his heart told him to. He describes himself as a non-status Indian, a man wanting to explore both the past and the future.
I hope to learn a lot more through our trip, and I think just the fact that they're putting on such a great voyage is an amazing starting point for continuing the process of reconciliation.
It's not going to be all rainbows and sunshine the whole trip, that's for sure. I know we're going to experience our share of rainy days and black flies, and it's about pulling through that together, and I think those experiences will hopefully only make us stronger as a group.
Indigenous, we offer you this tobacco for the life and health of our people.
The pre-launch ceremonies by the river, like the Mass, are solemn, respectful. The eagerness to begin this unusual adventure contained. Until the launch. The massive 26-foot canoes go in the water.
Good, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going to be in the stern.
The details and adjustments seem endless, but they set off. Retracing a traditional trade route from central Ontario to Montreal. 850 kilometers, less than a month to do it. Much of the route covering territory from which children were taken and sent to residential schools run by the Jesuits. Jesuits passed this way before on a similar trip. In 1967, 24 paddled the same route, a celebration marking Canada's centennial. This trip has a very different purpose and different paddlers. It's just a few days in, but already Eric and the group are learning what it takes to work together.
Okay, rock right here. Yeah, it's very like, oh my God, it's right here. Which way, Rennie?
Are we gonna follow them?
Follow the red canoe?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This is really shallow here. That's it, that's good. Follow that one.
They could have traded notes.
Definitely very physically challenging, but I've felt that the group and myself have felt a little bit of a rhythm developing. To feel that rhythm in the group pulling through that was great.
Anthony, a little bit chillier or what?
I think the group's doing well, and we're starting to get to know each other on a kind of a deeper level and have some of those deeper conversations.
North facing is this way, so it's straight.
Paul is embracing his role as navigator.
Being the navigator of our trip, it's been tasking at times, but definitely empowering. I'm definitely pushing my limits, I'd say.
Too much risk ahead. Yeah.
What's the weather like tomorrow?
Checking. 26 km/h winds, 42 gusts.
The worst side
It's getting worse tomorrow.
Well, we can't safely paddle today, so
There's way too much inexperience for waters like this out here.
The weather's so bad, the water's so rough on this day,
Okay, nice and easy. Really slippery rocks here.
they decide it's too dangerous to continue.
What a paddle.
When we catch up with them, there's exhaustion and relief.
felt good to finally get in after the crazy weather yesterday. We got stranded on an island, hit some about 6 and 8 foot rollers out in the Georgian Bay, and had to launch a little rescue mission to come get us.
But no matter the distance traveled, every day they make progress.
You do finish that. And then
The growing camaraderie is proof. 75-year-old Winston McKay, a Cree from Saskatchewan, has blisters on his hands, but a smile on his face.
I'm seeing the good side of these people that are doing it.
Winston saves our buns all the time. When we get in rough shape, he says, "This is what we got to do."
I think after what they did to the student residents, that was awful. But we got to live again. We can't sit back and worry about the past. We got to move ahead.
Her dad worked at the residential school as a janitor.
No one here thinks a month's paddling can overcome suffering that goes back centuries. And the conversations on this night delve deeply into the past.
So every year, at the beginning of September, there was silence in the community because there were no more kids. Can you imagine what that did to the parents?
Sister Eva Solomon, an Ojibwe from Northern Ontario, devotes most of her time to reconciliation, traveling the country to lecture and lead workshops.
What do you have any sense of what reconciliation is for you?
knowing the truth.
Yes.
Dialogue.
Yes.
Forgiveness.
Yes. Forgiveness.
And it's a measure of how much they are coming together that they can also share laughter too.
And I just would like to ask you to invite you to think in terms of the water and how we have reconciled with the water, even from yesterday.
I learned from Eva that it's the cycle. You reconcile, then you reconcile again, and you go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And so in some ways, this might be one cycle of reconciliation for the paddlers on this trip. Pulling together. More than any kind of verbal dialogue, that it's in some ways a simple, just experiencing the elements together, experiencing that challenge together of having to paddle in those conditions.
Do the same thing and ferry over.
No money have I none, yet shall I be merry, faithful, nobody holds no food.
26 days later, their voices drifting in song across the water.
Good job.
Yay!
They reach the end, Montreal.
Thank you.
A sense of relief that everyone arrived safe and sound. A certain sadness of being done and having to go back to my regular life, back to my studies. But I think above all, there's a sense of joy at the accomplishment of what's gone on in the last 26 days.
I feel amazing. There's a sense of accomplishment there now, and I feel there's a bunch of feelings that come to mind. The feeling of gratitude, respect, honor.
Reconciliation, the ultimate destination, feeling just a little closer. Howard Gould, CBC News.